All right, well, it is a true pleasure of mine to be here, Jimmer, in your house in Colorado. And, dude, this house is one of the most beautiful homes I've been in. So that's congrats
that's saying
on
something from you, too. The real estate mogul.
I wish I could time the market. If all my clients told you bought this in 2012 and the market's more than doubled in Denver now.
Yeah.
So
Hey, we got lucky. We bought it at the right time, and now it's been good.
I love it, man. Well, so many people, as I started telling people I was going to do this interview, they wanted me to ask you all these different types of questions. But it was funny because my sister, she said, well, actually, you should interview his wife. She's so funny on Instagram.
Yeah.
And you really do. You found a great wife.
Oh, yeah, the best.
It's kind of that classic story, star athlete at BYU with the cheerleader. Tell us, I don't think people know the full story, though. Like, walk us through. You're at BYU.
Yep.
How did you meet your wife? How did you guys come to start dating?
Yeah. So it's funny because when I was in high school, first of all, we didn't really have a whole lot of cheerleaders. And the ones that we had didn't necessarily look like the ones from BYU. And then I got to BYU and I was like, oh, these cheerleaders are cheering for us and it's fun. But the thing is that they're all short, blonde-haired. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what the BYU cheerleaders are. So I looked over there, and without looking at them, individually, I was just like, oh, they're all pretty. They're all short, blonde hair. It's great. So I didn't really individually look at them. And then eventually, one of my sister-in-laws, she was a cheerleader at BYU. So I used to hang out with her some off the court, and she was a great girl. And she was good friends with Whitney. And Whitney, took a liking to me at some point and was like, hey, Cammie, that's my sister-in-law's name. She's like, hey, can you introduce me and Jimmer? And Cammie's like, yeah, that's a great idea. So let's do that. So we first were introduced on the plane going to Philadelphia for the NCAA basketball tournament. And because the cheerleaders, the band, all of them come on a chartered plane with us. And that's the only time that the cheerleaders would travel with us. So
this is what year?
This was my sophomore year, her freshman year. So it would have been 2012.
Okay.
So 2000.
No,
No, sorry. Yeah, it was 2008.
Okay.
2008. I was there 2007. So 2008 it would have been. And so we were going to Philadelphia. And she sat behind me on the plane. And we got to talking everything, and Cammie and Whitney and me and Charles and our guys were playing like some cards just on the plane. And we got to meet each other, and that was cool. But Cammie, wanted to go to dinner with us in Philadelphia, go get some good food, some cheesesteaks or whatever, and just kind of hang out. So we got to the hotel in Philadelphia, and we were staying at the hotel. And all of a sudden I get this weird text from a number that I didn't recognize before. And I was looking at it, and it said, hey, just want to let you know this is actually Whitney. Cammie's phone died, and she gave me your number so that I could coordinate where we were going to go to dinner and when. And, of course, Cammie's phone didn't actually die. I was fully charged, no problem. She just wanted to get my number, and she ended up getting my number that way. And from then, we, started to like each other, started to hang out with each other a lot, and took me a lot. She liked me at first, and then she stopped liking me, and I started liking her, and we went through that whole cycle, and eventually I got her, and we got married. So it was a fun little story of how we started.
So you got to give her a little bit of credit there.
100%.
That was pretty.
It was sly.
Yeah, that was good.
Whitney's very smart, and I'll tell you what, Whitney was a huge flirt. So she knows how to play the game. She knew how to play the game. She knew what she was doing. She knew how to get numbers. Like it was smart, and it got my attention, and I liked it. You know what I mean? And from then on, it was great.
Dude, I love it. Oh, that's a great story. Well, take us back a little bit when you first started. I mean, you're in high school. You're growing up. You're getting recruited a little bit. What was the recruitment process, and how did you come to choose to play at BYU?
Yeah. So I grew up in Glens Falls, New York, small town, 14,000 people in there. Everybody knows everybody, and it's not a real basketball mecca. You know what I mean? It is New York, but still it's not New York City or anything like that. So it was tough. I didn't get very highly recruited out of high school. I was playing really well. I averaged 30 points a game for sophomore, junior, and senior year. Our team was top 5 in the state in every.
Were you guys in like a higher division or a lower division?
We would
give us some perspective.
Yeah, so we were in New York it goes AA, A, B, C, and D, whereas in Utah it's 5A, 4A. So we would have been classified as a 4A in Utah, but the problem is that the schools in New York are a lot smaller than the schools in Utah, just generally. So we only had like 200, not even 200 kids in my class, graduating in my class. So we would have been a really pretty smaller school in Utah. So that was partial of why people didn't know who I was. But also, I played AAU basketball for a team called Albany City Rocks, and we traveled all over the country and we played against the best players in the country. We played against all the best players that were in my grade class, and I always played well against them, and we always had a really good team, and the coaches would be sitting right there watching. I had Krzyzewski watching, Roy Williams, and Bill Self. They were all there watching, but they were watching other guys, and they didn't know who I was, but I'd play well, and they'd be like, oh, well, I think that was a fluke. And then they wouldn't watch me the next game. You know what I mean? So I didn't get highly recruited. I only got the biggest school that offered me was actually BYU. I got offered by Siena College, which is a small school, but has a great basketball program in upstate New York, right in Albany. If I didn't go to BYU, I would have gone to Siena College. I loved their coach. And their program was great. They've been to the tournament like 7 or 8 straight years coming up to that point, so they were really good. And then I got offered by like UMass and Marist College, St. Bonaventure, a lot of small East Coast schools. And so I decided, when BYU offered me, obviously being LDS, I decided that I would take, myself out to Utah and start a new life and start a new career. So I was very excited about it, but the process wasn't as crazy for me as it was for some other big-time athletes.
Gotcha. So did Coach Rose come out? He'd heard of you and came out and recruited you then?
Yeah, he did. So actually, how they found me at first was I went to a BYU basketball camp, just a random BYU basketball camp, when I was going into my sophomore year of high school. And so they hadn't heard about me until then. So I got there, and I was going into a sophomore year, so they put me with that group of kids. And I was there, and I was playing, and no one knew who I was, and everyone's like, wait, who is this kid? And then all of a sudden, they would be like, Coach Rose would kind of like sneak into my gym, and he'd kind of like look around, and he'd be watching me and stuff. And Coach Wardenberg at the time was there. He'd do the same thing. And eventually they were like, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? All this stuff. And my dad was there, so they talked to my dad, and then they moved me up to the highest division. I was young at the time, 14 or 15. I was probably 15 years old. They moved me up to the 17, 18 division and watched me play there. And I was, playing really well. And they were just like, wow, I don't know who this kid is, but this is great. So we started talking to Coach Rose. And then from then, Coach Rose and Coach Wardenberg were the two big ones that were actually recruiting me throughout the process. So I played football in high school as well, and Coach Rose came to a football game and sat in the rain. It was a terrible game, and watched me play. And
what did you play in football?
So I played wide receiver, and I played outside linebacker, and then I played kick. I was the kicker, and I did kick return. I didn't come off the field. Like I said, we didn't have a huge school, so we needed all of our good athletes to play. And I loved football, but I didn't like football practice. Yeah. So I decided against it, but I loved playing football. And so he came to a football game and watched, and then they came to all my AAU games all across the country and my high school games, and they just showed great interest. And because of that, I loved them, and signed with BYU.
They're very cool. One thing that I remember people asked a lot, and a lot of people worried about when you were at BYU, is did you ever consider going on a mission, or was that pretty clear you wanted to play basketball and we're going to stick to that?
Yeah, honestly, it was pretty clear that I told them I wasn't, because that's one of the things they have to worry about. Right. They have to worry about if the kid's going on a mission.
Juggle scholarships.
We got to scholarships. We got to maybe get a junior college transfer to be there for those 2 years, and then so that's something that they want to know from the kids. And I decided not to go on a mission. It's something that is obviously a personal decision. And, growing up in upstate New York, I didn't see many people go on missions. I was the only LDS kid in my high school. I didn't have any LDS friends at all. And my dad didn't go on a mission, and neither did my older brother. So it just wasn't in my mind. And then all of a sudden I was being asked, hey, do you want to go on a mission? And I was like, I honestly never thought about it before, you know what I mean? And then I thought about it very seriously. I prayed about it, did all the things that I needed to, and just felt like I was supposed to play basketball at BYU and serve in a different way. And it's worked out very well.
Yeah, I think you made the right decision there.
For sure.
When at BYU because your freshman year, it was kind of like you'd get in and make some shots or whatever. But when did it hit? When did you have that game or that moment where I guess you could say would you look back on as kind of the start of what became Jimmer Mania?
I think the very start of it, so freshman year, obviously, I don't think any games there. I think my sophomore year, I started to play a little bit more, and I started to get into a groove. I was the starting point guard, and started to become more of a role and more of a leader on the team. But we had great players still. JT, Jonathan Tavernari, and Lee Camard was our leader at that time, and player of the year, and just a great player. And but I noticed, once we started conference, I started to get even more of a role. And I remember one specific game when we played at San Diego State. They were very good, and we were going for a Mountain West Conference title. And we were playing, and we needed to win this game. And I remember that game, I took over, and I started to score like crazy. I think I had somewhere close to 30 points, and just kind of controlled the game on the road, and we were able to win a huge game on the road. And everyone was just like, wow, that was a great performance. And I think from then, my teammates had trusted me. My coaching staff was like, hey, we're going to ride you. And, at the end of the sophomore year, going into my junior year, I just felt like I was one of the leaders of the team and a guy that could really help our team get to where we wanted to be. And that's kind of where it started. And then obviously it snowballed into crazy effects later on in my career.
As that started to kind of happen, like what was it like being the person that mania was kind of surrounding? I mean, it got pretty crazy. You were one of the lead stories every night on SportsCenter. Yeah. Everybody knew of Jimmer. I mean, anytime that they don't have to use your last name to describe you, you've kind of arrived in some level.
That's my mom's job right there. She did a great job of branding
really
me from a young age.
My mom just didn't have the creativity.
Right, exactly.
Just threw the Y on there and called it good.
Yeah, she threw the Y instead of ER, so.
I actually know at least, I have 3 people that I know of that named their children Jimmer. So
that's
there's
awesome.
At least, how many, there's going to be at least 20 to 30 random kids out there with your name now, which is pretty cool to think about. But so being in the middle of all that mania, did you really enjoy it the whole time? Or was there moments where you're like, man, this is a lot, I got a lot of pressure on me now?
Yeah, so when it really, really hit was my senior year.
Senior year, right.
So in my senior year, once we started to get into conference play, like when I played against, it was a Utah game, and then there was a San Diego State game at home. And when I played those 2 games and made those shots, and we beat them both and really, really well and played well, and our team was top 5 in the country. And because of that, they were like, who are these white kids, that are from Utah that are out here, scoring like crazy and shooting these long range shots and winning all these basketball games against really great colleges and great teams. And because of that, it just exploded. And I honestly enjoyed every second of it, because I didn't expect that to happen, but I will say that my life did change like overnight. There was one day I was walking on campus, and there was people would recognize me, know who I was. It was great, and I could walk to class and it would be no problem. Then overnight, I had a San Diego State game. The next day, I walked on campus. I couldn't get to my class. Literally, I was there, and people were just coming up and asking for pictures and autographs, and I didn't make it to class on time. Literally, I missed the whole class because it took me an hour to get there. And it just happened overnight. So ever since then, when I was around campus, it was really difficult. I had to go incognito to go anywhere.
Wearing disguises and things.
Yeah, I couldn't go out to eat with Whitney, because if I did, it was just people swarming for pictures. So that sometimes, can be difficult, because if you want to hang out with your girlfriend at the time and you want to have a nice meal, and you have fans coming up. And it doesn't annoy me, but it annoys Whitney, a little bit more, because she's like, we want to just hang out and be normal.
Try to be in the moment a little bit.
And she has to take the pictures and all that stuff most of the time. So, that's the down part about it. But honestly, I love the fans, and you have to realize that, it's not going to be there forever, but also the fans are the ones that are paying for your successes. They're paying me now to be able to play the game of basketball. So you always have to be mindful of that. But, I loved every second of it. It was life-changing, and I look back on it now, and I'm just like, man, that was some of the best times that I've ever had in my life. So it was a really, really cool experience.
Well, I think for me, and I want to ask you what was your favorite game, but I know my favorite game, because I recognize, I think your junior year, you guys beat Florida the first game of the tournament, and then lost to Kansas State.
Right.
But that kind of started it. It was kind of like those that that followed BYU closely had a
Right.
pretty good idea of, this next year is going to be a special year.
For sure.
And so I remember I told my friends and family, I'm like, anyone that wants to come, I'm going to go to like every game this
Right.
year. So I flew. The real estate market was in the tank, to be
Right.
honest. I was scrounging for that money. But I
sure.
remember the San Diego State game at San Diego State.
Yeah.
And I think I found a guy selling front row tickets for like $800, and I didn't have the money to do it. But I'm like, you know what? This will never happen at BYU again. At least it's like a 30-year gap between this kind of mania. And so I said, I'm doing it. And it's so funny because you guys played amazing. I think they were ranked 3rd in the nation, and you were 5th or 6th.
Yep.
And you guys beat them, and I ran on the court because at BYU, like that happened a few games in a row. People and I just didn't think anything of it. I just run on the court, but we were like the only BYU fans. I'll never forget. Well, there's actually a picture I have on my Facebook of me high-fiving. It showed the CBS Sports. I'm going in the line with you guys, just high-fiving everyone. But before I could get very far, I got tackled by like 5 police officers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're like, "You're going to jail." And I started thinking, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can't just run on the court." And I was like, "Crap,
it's an opposing arena."
Yes, and so they had me cuffed in the tunnel. I remember because I knew Jackson Emery at the time, and you guys walked by, and he just looked at me like, "Jimmy, what have you done?
What happened? Why are you in cuffs right now?"
And I think what ended up, they let me go because some fans started throwing stuff at you.
Yeah,
and so they were like, "All right, we need to go
deal
get
with
them.
That. You go,
get these 2 idiots out of here." So anyway, we
so
got
it worked
out
out
of it.
that they threw.
But that was my
stuff
favorite game of the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was pretty special. What was your favorite game that you played at BYU at all the big games?
Yeah, there's so many great ones. Honestly, one of my favorite games, and it's not one that people would really think of as a favorite game, was my senior year when we played at UNLV against UNLV on their court. That was one thing that I had never done before. I had never won a game at UNLV on their court. So I had lost like 4 or 5 straight.
Well, the year before they jumped out to like a 30-5. I was there.
Yeah.
We left. No, sorry about that.
No, for sure. We could not.
Yes,
we could not beat them on their court. I don't know what it was. We beat everybody else on their court, no problem. But UNLV, for some reason, they came with ridiculous energy. It was always packed. They loved playing against BYU at home because they knew they had us. And I was going into that game, and my teammates were like, "We're not losing this game. Like, this is our last chance at it that we're gonna have, and I don't want to have this career and not be able to win this one game." So we went to UNLV, and they had a spurt in the beginning again, and they were up by like 15 points in the first half. And we got in the huddle, and me and Jackson Emery were just screaming at people. We were just like, "This is not happening again. We're not letting this happen." Coach didn't even need to say anything. We were just ready to go. We came out, and I just started pulling up from the V, from the UNLV. Jackson was getting steals like crazy. We pulled it back, got it close at halftime, and then we ended up destroying them by about 20 in the second half. We just were on fire. Me and Jax both were just hitting everything, just locked in, and we won, and the crowd was just silent. And I remember just coming back to the huddle and just screaming as loud as I could at everyone in the stands, you know what I mean? Being like, "This is not happening again. We finally got you guys." And that was the start of, where we felt like, this is going to be special. This is going to be special because we just did something we hadn't done before. We pulled together. Adversity was coming, and we just fought it off, and we started to win that, and we won that game. And then from then on, we took over the league and won a lot of games. So that was probably my favorite game.
Dude, I love it. That's a great answer. It's one, not you're right, not the one that I would have been expecting.
For sure.
That was an amazing. I remember that game very well because the year before. Yeah. I mean, it was so bad. Yeah. We just left the stadium.
Every year it was like that. We couldn't get past them. I don't know what it was, but we couldn't get past them.
I love that. Well, I want to talk about your senior year, kind of a tough moment. You find out Brandon's suspended.
Yeah.
I think you just beat San Diego State, actually, San Diego State. You got up to, I think that's when you got 3rd in the nation or whatever. Walk us through a little bit of that day. What was it like in your shoes?
Yeah, it was a tough day. Like you had said, we'd come off such a big high where we had just beat San Diego State to come 3rd in the country. We felt like we were unstoppable, like we weren't going to be beat, and we were just going to continue to go. We were going to make a huge run, and things were going well. We were just very confident in ourselves and our abilities. And we come in the next day of practice, and it was going to be a light day of practice. We were just going to, get some shots up, watch some film, do stuff like that. And it was kind of just solemn in the room. And, we were all sitting there. We go and watch film before practice every day.
You didn't know at this point.
We didn't know at this point. So we were in there and we were all good. We were all joking around, but the coaching staff, we knew there was just something weird. And Coach Rose came in and he said, "Hey, Jackson and Jimmer, will you come out and talk with us?" And we're like, "All right." So we went out and talked, and they got the coaches all together, and then they told us, Brandon is gotten suspended. We don't want to talk necessarily about what it is, but it was an honor code violation. At the time, this is what they were telling us. This is an honor code violation, and he's suspended for the rest of the year. He will not be able to play any more games. And me and Jackson were just like, we're dumbfounded. You know what I mean? We were just like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. And for me, I was thinking about the team, but honestly, it wasn't the biggest part of my mind, and it wasn't the biggest part on Jackson's mind. It was Brandon. We were like, how is Brandon going to take this? How is Brandon feeling at this moment? Because he's like a brother to us, and we don't want him to feel, bad or like he let down the team or, anything like that. We wanted to keep his spirits up. So, we talked about that, how we could keep his spirits up. And obviously we went into the team room and we delivered the message to the team, just us as players. And, everyone got real quiet really quickly. It was a very difficult day. And we ended up playing New Mexico 2 days later at our place. And we had been feeling really good about ourselves, but the last couple of days were really, really difficult, and we were thinking about that and had it on our minds. And they ended up beating us at home by like 20 points, and we don't get beat at home. And that just shows it was really difficult on us. And, so it was definitely an unfortunate thing. It was something that we look back on and we're like, man, what could have happened if Brandon was on our team, and how far could we have gone, because he was, such a great player for us. But at the same time, it's like we came together as a group and still did some great things.
Yeah, I think that's the part of it. That New Mexico game was such a low. I remember being at that game, and you're just like, oh man, are we done for the year?
Exactly.
And I think it wasn't until, I believe, the New Mexico game again in the tournament when it was like the spirits really got up again, right? I think you dropped 50 in that game or whatever.
Yeah, just a quick, after we lost that New Mexico game, we regrouped and we won our last game in Wyoming, against Wyoming at home. And that won us the league outright. So we were the champions of the league. So we started to feel good. We're like, we're still a really good team. We can still do some really great things this year if we keep grind and keep our mind together. We got enough talent in this room to still do some great things. And once we won that game, and then we got to the tournament, and then we played New Mexico again. Now, New Mexico had beat us two times in a row that year, and we didn't want to lose that game. And we wanted to make it the championship, show people that we could beat this team even without Brandon. And we went in, and I had a great game, had 50, and we won that game, and were able to make it to the finals. And, that really got our spirits up again, like, hey, we can do some damage in the tournament if we get there.
Yeah. What, if you would share, what did you say to Brandon when you talked to him?
I honestly, I just was telling Brandon, hey, it's an unfortunate thing, but we're here with you. We're here to help you. We want you around our team. He sat on the bench for all the games. He came to all of our practices. I just wanted to make sure to say, hey, B, we want you with us. You're a brother. You're here. We're going through this together, and you give us all of your energy, everything that you have on this bench to keep our spirits up, to keep us going as hard as we can. And he did that. He was our biggest cheerleader. He was bigger than Whitney, in the cheerleading department. He was out there high-fiving. He was screaming every single time we made a shot. He was, knew the game plan well, telling us what to do. And I just wanted to make sure that he knew that we're here with him. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone, it's, unfortunate because it's a public thing for him to have to go through where other people don't have to have that. So it's really difficult, but that's what you sign up for as an athlete. But we just wanted to be by his side.
Oh, that's cool. Well, you guys ended up destroying Gonzaga and get to the Sweet 16, losing overtime to Florida. And the bracket kind of opened up, right? It's kind of well known. Do you win it all if Brandon, he's such a great player.
Yeah.
Do you guys win it all if he doesn't get suspended?
For me, yes, I think we do. I really do. I think we could have won it all even without him. I think if we won that Florida game, we only had 3 games left. Yeah. One of them was Butler, who was a very good team, but beatable, and then the rest of the teams
VCU,
were,
right?
Yeah,
after
VCU
that,
and Connecticut.
Connecticut.
So it was winnable. And if we had Brandon just that little extra oomph and playing the way that we were playing going into it, I think we could have, and I think we would have, you know. And so that's always tough to think about. But at the same time, I was so proud of our guys of how we didn't give up. We hadn't been to the Sweet 16 for BYU in over 30 years since Danny Ainge was there. And for us to be able to do that with, you know, our tallest guy being Kyle Collinsworth out there playing center for us, rebounding the basketball, was something that was special. And I mean, it was one of the best years ever.
Well, I think getting as far as you did still, you know, in spite of all that, I think it kind of validated the team, validated this season. In my mind as a fan, it
definitely
did. I know that.
For us as well, you know what I mean? Something we hadn't done in 30 years. Obviously, we wanted to go further, and we felt like we could. I mean, it was an overtime game. It was so close to get into that Elite Eight, and then who knows what happens even then. But, yeah, we validated that we were a great team. Yeah. You know, we were a top 15 team the whole year. And with Brandon, we were a top 10, top 5 team the whole year. And we validated that in the tournament. We got to the last 16 and should have been in the last 8. And we didn't even have B. So, I mean, yeah, we validated it.
Do you think, looking now at BYU's program and going forward with it, do you feel like, or what do you think BYU's missing, or what do they need? Is the honor code, you know, I don't think that's necessarily, like, obviously it affected your season and things, but what does the BYU basketball program need that they're missing right now these last couple of years that maybe you feel like would help them get back to, you know, a run in the Sweet 16 or something?
You know, I just feel like, you know, they have really good players. I just feel like it takes a group of guys that truly believe that they can make it. You know what I mean? And it takes a couple of veteran guys. For us, it was Jackson and I. And we were senior guys. We had been through it. We had been starting with each other since we were sophomores. And that experienced backcourt going into big games and experienced tournaments, since you're going to be handling the ball a lot, is really, really important. So they have a group of guys right now that could have that. TJ, you know, he's been playing for 2 years now. Nick Emery is coming back, who's been through some things. And they have, you know, Yoli, who's been playing. And these guys are going to grow up together. And as they get to junior and senior year, which is coming up here, they could be very, very good. But it takes a group that says, we're not losing this game. You know what I mean? They go out there and do everything that they can to do it. And a lot of times in college, it's not necessarily about X's and O's. It's not about, you know, who's more talented, because everybody's talented. It's about how hard are you going to play and what mindset do you have going into it. And that's something that we mastered.
Well, you truly did. I mean, it showed in your game, right? Like, where did you get the confidence that you had as a player? Because you pop up from anywhere on the floor. I remember the shot at Utah, going into the half. I was there. I was on a date, actually, in the middle of the Crimson Club. And I just stood.
That was a great shot.
That was one of my favorite shots
That was my favorite shot I hit within throughout the whole thing. Just because at that point, Utah fans were cheering for me.
Yes, they were.
In their place.
They were like, wow, okay.
Which was nothing like, I've never seen anything like that. You know what I mean? Bitter rivals. So that was super, super cool.
It's like Rocky IV.
Yeah, exactly. We turned the Soviets. So, you know, I mean, yeah, it was, so that was really, really special. But you know, as a young kid, I played with my brothers. My brother, who's 7 years older than me, and all of his friends. And I played with them all the time. And since I played with them all the time, I was just playing against much older competition. So I had to be somewhat confident, had to have a fight in me that other kids may not have, because they would just block my shot. They didn't care. They played as I was, you know, as I was one of them. Yeah. And because of that, I gained the confidence. And when I played against my peers, I was like, oh, well, I'm better than you are, just because I've been playing against all these guys. And I remember one time specifically, we were 6 years old, and we had just started our first, you know, club team, like just with our Glens Falls. And the only other team we played was a team from Fort Edward, which was right next to us. And we got to the gym, and my dad goes over to the other coach, and he's like, hey, I just wanted to ask you, do you guys play three-pointers? Like, do you count three-pointers? And the other guy's like, count three-pointers? They're 6 years old. They can't shoot from three-point range. Like, you can't even come. And my dad's like, oh, okay. She's like, why? He was like, well, we have a couple guys that can shoot threes and make them. And then they're like, oh, okay. So they're like, what are we getting ourselves into? So I started playing in these games when I was 6, and I was pulling up from 3 and making them consistently. And everyone's like, who's this kid? What are they doing? You know what I mean? Like, no one else can even shoot it from the 3-point line, and he's pulling up consistently and making them. And ever since then, I could shoot when I was younger, and then I just kept developing it, and I knew, like, I just had a mindset of I can make any shot if I want to shoot it. And you have to have that type of mentality if you want to be a great basketball player. And for some weird reason, I truly believed it. I just believed that I was, the best one on the court whenever I was out there. And because of that, it gives you confidence to go do what you want to do.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
One of the fun things about your senior year is I believe there's 7 major college awards.
Yep.
And you cleaned it up. You took all of them, right?
I did.
The Naismith Award, the Wooden Award, out of the AP Player of the Year, the ESPY for College Athlete of the Year.
Yep.
You were up against that year
Cam Newton, Kemba Walker, 2 of the big names in it.
Which was your favorite award? Which one were you like, wow, I'm surprised I won that? Or did you feel like you were going to win them all?
The one that I was surprised that I won was the ESPY.
Okay.
The Player of the Year awards, it was between me and Kemba. Yep. But I kind of had a feeling that I was going to, for some reason, win those awards. So it wasn't quite as surprising to win the National Player of the Year awards, but I was going up against Cam Newton in the ESPY, and he was a Heisman Trophy winner. They won the national championship. He was huge. Like, he was unbelievable. And then they told me just before, because I knew a guy that was doing some of the filming behind the scenes.
Okay.
And he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, Jimmer, I just want to let you know you won the award."
Took the pressure off you.
I was like, "What?" So then I was like, "Oh my goodness." Whitney was with me and we were there, and I was like, "Man, what am I going to say? I don't know. Do I make a joke? Do I not? You know what I mean? All this stuff." So that was super cool. And Justin Timberlake and Aaron Rodgers were the ones that presented it to me. So I mean, what an unbelievable experience that was to be there. So that was the most surprising. But the day that I won there are 7 National Championship Player of the Year awards, and I won all 7 of them, and they have all the ceremonies on the same day. Oh. So I had 7 ceremonies that I had to attend that day.
That's a long day.
Oh my goodness, myself and Coach Rose and the coaches that were there, Coach Lacombe, Coach Warrenberg, Coach Rice, Coach Nashif. They were all there, and like they would just, every once in a while they would like disappear, and I'd be like, "Where are they?" And they're like, "It's way too long, like we got to get something to eat, you know what I mean, and all this stuff." So that was a very eventful and fun day, and I got to meet a lot of amazing people and have an unbelievable, cool experience.
Who was the favorite person that you met through all the kind of the Jimmer Mania part while you were still in college or right before the draft?
Yeah, I met so many great people. I mean, I met all the NBA greats, Charles Barkley and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Michael Jordan and just everybody you can possibly think of. But my favorite thing that I think I did was I had a private luncheon with Brian Santiago and then with Jerry West. Oh. And he's the logo of the NBA basketball. Yeah. And it was just me, Brian, and Jerry in a room for breakfast, and he was just talking basketball. And what a cool experience that was. I mean, he's an interesting guy. He's amazing. And he was the one that really taught me about some of the importance of some of the mid-range shots because obviously that's what they did back in the day. They didn't have a 3-point range, but they could still shoot it from deep, but it just didn't count. But it started to evolve, obviously. But he was telling me, if you can really get your mid-range game, your floaters, your runners, all of that stuff, if you can master that, it's going to open up your outside shot that much more. And I worked on it continually, and now I have a really good package of mid-range game, and it has helped me throughout my career being able to get by guys and being able to finish at the rim and not just be limited to be an outside shooter. So it was cool to just hear him talk about the stories and everything, which was an awesome experience.
No, very cool. Well, as you got prepared for the draft, you kind of knew you were going to go probably in the first half of the first round, but you didn't really know where. Did you have a preference, and how did you feel when I guess you got drafted by the Bucks, but ultimately by the Kings? It was pretty quickly they made it known that
right
was
away.
the pick, right?
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen before I got picked. So
how did you have a team you were hoping to go to that maybe fit your system better? And then tell us a little bit about draft day going to the Kings, because it ended up being let's just call it a bad situation. But going into the draft, I don't know. For
sure. I mean, we had 5 teams that we worked out for, and that was it. Okay. And when I went into the draft, because I was like, I'm probably not going to go past 15, which was, I think, the Pacers. They were the 15th pick, and we weren't probably going to go before 5. So my reach, I did one reach team, and I can't remember at 5. But the teams I worked out for were the Knicks, the Pacers, the Sacramento Kings, the Phoenix Suns, and one other team. I can't remember who it was at this point. I'll think about it eventually and I'll remember. But there was one other team, and they were all within the 5 and 15 range. And I had really good workouts at a lot of them. And I had a really good workout in Sacramento. I had a great workout at the Pacers, and also with the Knicks. And the Pacers told me that, Larry Bird was like, if you're there, we're going to pick you. And but they were 15th, and they didn't think that I was going to be there at that point. And we think the Knicks were going to pick me as well if I was there, because they were like 13th or 14th at that time or something like that. And we thought that if I was there for that, they would pick me as well. It was the Jazz. The other team was the Jazz. Yeah, that was the last team, of course. Yeah, so I worked out for the Jazz. And so those 5 teams, and I had great workouts, and the Kings ended up really liking me, and the Maloofs, who were the owners at the time, just loved me. And they just felt like they needed to have me on the team, but also the coach, Paul Westphal. He loved me. He loved my game. He reminded me of himself. So he was like, I think I can work with this. I really want him on my team. So I got drafted into Sacramento, and I was super excited about it. I really was. I mean, I had a little bit, I was a little scared. I was a little nervous. A lot of things were going on.
You're going to an organization that wanted you, a coach that wanted you.
Exactly. I was like, oh, this is a good fit. This is going to be fun. This will be good. They need some shooters. Theoretically, it looked like it was going to be really, really good, and that's why we worked out for him at that point with Paul on the team. So I got there, and 2 weeks into it, before most like 5 games into the season, our coach got fired, Paul Westphal, and he was the one that really loved me, and I was playing and I was doing well. Things were going well the first couple of games, and then all of a sudden he gets fired, and things change in a heartbeat. And I go from playing a lot to all of a sudden I'm not playing much anymore. Some games I'll play, other games I'll have DNPs. Some games I'll play 2 minutes and come out. Some games I'll play 18 minutes. It was really inconsistent and kind of all over the map. Our new head coach, Keith Smart, he was trying to figure out who he wanted to play and his rotations, and he wanted to keep his job and, trying to win the games and trying to figure out things. So he was just trying everybody all over the place. And that really, really hurt me as a player. I wasn't able to get consistent minutes and get into a consistent rotation, which was really difficult. And
especially being a shooter, right? I mean,
for sure.
When you're not in your rotation.
And it was something I had never really dealt with before. I never had DNPs where I didn't play. You know what I mean? Like I never grew up never not playing. You know what I mean? And most guys don't when they get to the NBA, and then all of a sudden you have DNPs and you're like, oh, well, what am I doing wrong? Am I not good anymore? You have confidence issues.
Did you approach the coach at that time, or did you have talks about it? Like, how does that work behind the scenes when you're not playing and you're kind of frustrated about it?
Yeah. You try to talk with the coach as much as you possibly can. Some coaches are very vocal and they'll talk to you all the time. Other coaches are a little bit more aloof and they don't really want to talk to you because they make tough decisions. And they're like, I don't really want to have a relationship because we could trade you next week. Mm-hmm. I might not play you tonight. You know what I mean? So it just kind of depends. And Coach Smart was pretty good. I had a couple of conversations with him about what I needed to do. And most of the time it was, pretty, answers that everyone thought. You need to play better defense. We need to see more fire, like whatever it was. But a lot of it I felt like was just, they were just giving lip service to be like, I'm not playing you. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the decision I'm making. Even if you do these other things and show it, sometimes you're still not going to play. So, it was just one of those things that I don't know 100% why I didn't play. But it was difficult. I know that. And it was something that was very, very tough for me. But at the same time, I think it's helped me become the person I am today.
And so dealing with because you were on such a high, right?
Yeah.
Coming off your senior year. Was that locker room, and you also were playing with some of your best friends at BYU. Was the locker room, was it toxic in there? Like, people say the Kings, it's like businesses, right? There's a reason certain businesses excel and others don't. NBA teams, there's a reason certain NBA teams always do well, and other ones are always at the bottom of drafting the top 10.
For sure.
Was there some dysfunction there? And did you have any opportunity to try to talk with the owners where they, had reached to draft you?
Yeah, it was interesting because so at that point, as soon as I had gotten drafted, into that season, the owners were trying to sell the team. They decided that they wanted to sell the team. So they honestly weren't around very much. So that was a big part of it, is we didn't have leadership at the top. We didn't have an owner that was really worried about what was going on except for trying to sell the team. We had a GM who knew at some point he was probably going to get fired when the new people were going to come in because, they're going to want their new guys to come in. And he knew that. So he did the best he could, but there wasn't much that he was like, I can't do much. You know what I mean? So and then we had our head coach fired. So we had an interim head coach who was our assistant coach before come in and be the coach. So now you have at the top, we just didn't have a whole lot of leadership. So because of that, in the locker room, it was hard to control guys. Guys were really playing kind of just for themselves. Mm-hmm. And a lot of guys were doing that. And, myself included. And I'll put myself in that boat. You know what I mean? Like, everyone was just trying to be like, hey, I can still play. And the way that they know how to do it is by going out there and trying to score the basketball. Sure. So it wasn't like a true team where we were just passing and Golden State, all these Boston, these teams where they're, fluid. And it was more like whoever caught it was going to shoot the basketball. And so it hurt a lot of players on that team, and myself included, and it was real difficult to deal with that. And obviously I was very high profile coming in. People knew who I was. Right. And when you get to the NBA, they're like, we don't care who you are. You know what I mean? I did the same thing, but I did it better than you. You know what I mean? When you're in college. So these guys are like, I'm going to come at you every single day, and you're going to have to prove to me that you can do this.
Was there a little bit of weirdness in the locker room because there's a rumor that because you had so much fan attention and the fans loved you so much that it actually caused issues in the locker room? Did you ever experience that?
Not as much with the players. The players, they were all pretty cool with it. They would always joke around and they would always be like, oh, Jimmer, whenever I went somewhere, because they heard it all the time when I came into locker room, whether I was playing or whether I wasn't. So they always had, that type of joke. I don't think that bothered them quite as much, at least outwardly towards me. It might have bothered them in between and might have made them go harder at me at practice or whatever it is. But I think it honestly could have affected some coaches that I had, because if I wasn't playing, the coaches would just get yelled at and yelled at and be like, put him in. And it was very awkward for me. I didn't like it because I knew that some of the coaches were like, I don't want to put him in just because these guys are telling me to. And if all of a sudden they
it's almost in spite of them, you're like, I'm not going to play him.
Exactly.
Right?
You know what I mean? And I don't know if that was going on, but that's just the way that it felt for me. You know what I mean? Like these coaches, are here and they don't want to, just give in to the fans all the time, because if they do, they're just going to keep doing it. And so it happened several times, several different arenas all over the country. And, because of that, I felt like that was a little part of it, and which is unfortunate. I felt, it was very tough, but I feel like there's players that have gone through it before. I feel like Tim Tebow was a guy that went through it
it's very
in the
similar.
NFL, and his was even greater scale than mine was. And but I felt like I was a miniature type of that, which it's tough, but at the same time, it is what it is. You just got to roll with it and keep going.
Who was your favorite teammate you ever played with in the NBA?
Yeah, my favorite teammate, I have two. One of them his name's Ryan Anderson. Mm-hmm. He plays for the Rockets now. He played with me in the Pelicans, and along with that, a really great teammate of mine was Jeff Withey. Us three were really great friends. We hung out on the road, went to dinner, did all the things just normal friends would do. So I love playing with those guys. I related with them really, really well. They were super fun to be around, and we just had a good camaraderie with each other. Some of the best teammates I've played with on the floor, I'd say my number one is probably Jakeem Noah for the Boston, or for the Chicago Bulls when he was there. Right. And he was such a good teammate because he didn't care about anything except for winning. And he would get 15 rebounds a game. He would set all the screens. He would pass the ball. He didn't care about any of his stats. He just wanted to win the game, but he would do whatever necessary to win that game. And he was so energetic. I'd never seen someone like this before. Like, for every single NBA game, there's 82 of them, plus preseason, plus postseason. He was fired up for every single game, like yelling before the game, punching guys, getting them ready to go. And because of that, the team fed off of that. And we played harder than everybody else. And that's why we were good when we were with the Bulls. And so that type of teammate is the type of teammate you want to play with. And it was super fun to be a part of that team and that organization, because we were really good and it was really, really well run. It was fun to be a part of.
Yeah, it's cool to hear that about a guy that you just don't know that inside, right?
For sure.
Well, and who was the toughest player you ever played against, the toughest defender you played against in the NBA?
For me, the toughest, there was a couple of people that were the toughest to guard. And I'll give you three. I'll say the first one was obviously Steph. Steph is unbelievably hard to guard just because he shoots it from so far out and he can dribble the ball so well and he finishes well. So he's really, really tough to guard. But then there was two guys just by sheer athleticism were almost impossible to guard. And one of them is Russell Westbrook. When he's coming in ahead of steam of you, there's no one in the world that can stop him. He's just so fast. He can pull up on a dime and shoot it. So he's very, very, very tough to defend. But one guy, not at this point in his career, but back then was Derrick Rose. When he had an MVP season, I was playing against him there. And his explosiveness, his first step was the quickest I had ever seen. And you'd be sitting there and you'd be trying to guard him and you give him space and all of a sudden he'd take that first step and he's just like, you just turn your head and he's gone and he's just dunking on someone. And it happened to everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he was just so explosive and so quick when he was younger, when he had that MVP season, that people forget how good he was. And he was one of the toughest guys to defend. And then there was guys that guarded me that were tough. I mean, Tony Allen was one of them. From Memphis.
Yep.
He's just a tough guy, like the grind father he calls himself. You know what I mean? Like he prided himself on playing defense, and when I came into the game, he always wanted to guard me, which I thought was a compliment because he was the best defender. He's like, I want to play against him, and I had a couple of really good games against him. Actually, I had 20 against Memphis when I played, and I think he respected that, which was fun. But him and then Avery Bradley is a really good defender on Boston as well. Really, really tough defender, long, athletic, jumps quick, and those two guys are tough.
That's fun. With Kawhi, you guys had your battles in college so much, and I think any unbiased opinion would say you won those battles in college. He's now a top 5 NBA player and has really blown up. Did you see him becoming what he is now? And is that hard to see a player that you competed hand in hand with become one of the top 5 players in the NBA?
It was, I played a little bit with the Spurs for a little while for the preseason and got to know him a little bit. And I didn't necessarily see him being a top 5 player in the NBA, but I saw him being, if he worked on his game, that he could be very, very good because he's so athletic and he's so gifted. He has unbelievably long arms, huge hands, and so he's an athletic specimen. And if he worked on his game, I was like, well, he could be, one of the top players because, not many people have those physical attributes that he has. And he got placed in a great spot where the Spurs were able to just develop him like crazy. They didn't have to play him too much in the beginning. They just developed him, and they started with his corner 3 and got that good, and then they moved their way up the arc. And he had such a good team around him that he could play because he was a great defender. And then he started to develop offensively in the offseason and all that stuff. And being with the Spurs, has really made him blossom, it was fun to see. I mean, I played against him. I had great battles against him. We were able to beat him and everything. And so he respects me as a player. He respects me as a person. And he knows that I can play. So it's cool to have, a top 5 player in the NBA know that, I can definitely play and I can play in that league and do some damage, if given an opportunity, because I did against him when in college. It would be much harder to see if he was like a showboater, a guy that was really arrogant, someone that was telling you about how good they were. That would be more tough for me to see just because I'm not that type of a person. But he's such a calm, quiet guy that doesn't showboat, that just goes out and does his business, that honestly I was super happy for him because I got to know him a little bit, and he's been a really good guy, and it's always been great to me. So it's cool to see someone from college that did really well play well in the NBA.
That's cool. And I think the question that I want to ask you that everybody has asked me is, I've watched your game. I've watched enough NBA. I'm not a scout or anything like that, but everybody kind of expected, that you would really take off in the NBA, and for whatever, it just didn't happen.
For sure.
What do you think, or hasn't happened to the date, right?
Right.
What do you think was the main reason that your game didn't translate as well as to the NBA game as it did college?
For sure. I mean, partially I knew that I wasn't going to just come right in and be BYU Jimmer in the NBA. I mean, it's really tough to do that. There's no one that really goes in and just is able to do that. In the NBA, you have to wait your turn, and you have to know that there's veteran guys there, and you have to, find your niche and then be able to move from that direction. And there's only like 10% of the league that can go on any team and just be great no matter what. You know, the coaches are going to love him no matter what. Though there's like 10% of those guys are going to be able to go anywhere and play well. The rest of the 90% of the league, you got to be in the right situation and the right spot to be able to really succeed. You need a coach that believes in you. You need teammates that believe in you. You need an opportunity to play consistent minutes every single night. And if you have that, most of the guys that play are going to do well. And, you know, I haven't had that opportunity yet. So I feel like my game translates to the NBA actually really well because I shoot the ball and I can shoot from three. And, you know, that's what they're looking for now. You know, they're looking for a small ball that can space and shoot the three and you know, get into the paint and do all those things. So I think my game will translate now to the NBA, even now, more so now than even when I got into the NBA.
It's become almost more of a European type of league, the NBA, than it used to be, right?
For sure.
Like that shooting.
The last couple of years, it's even more of a three-point shooting team. So I think now it's really, really fitting into my game. But, you know, for me, you know, obviously I'm not the greatest defender in the world. And so I think that played a part into it where guys were just like, you know, some coaches were like, I just don't want to play him because I don't think he plays good defense. And which I think is unfair because there's a lot of guys that don't play great defense in the NBA, and it's really hard to stop a guy one-on-one in the NBA. It's almost impossible. But I feel like I can play within a team concept, and I can, you know, make sure that I'm putting my guy in the right situation to be, you know, the best that we can be on defense. And I showed that when I played with the Bulls. And I was able to do that with them somewhat and show that, you know, I'm not as bad of a defender as people think. But obviously, I'm not a great defender, and that's part of it. And then some back in the day, it was what was he a 1? Was he a 2? You know, it was just, you know, he wasn't a true point guard, but you can't play him at the 2 because he's a little short. You know what I mean? That type of thing. So there was some coaches at that point that were worried about that. But nowadays, it's kind of positionless basketball. So, you know, I think that those different types of things really played a part into it. But I think, you know, ultimately the thing that really killed me is that the coach that really loved me at that point got fired. And then the next coach that came in didn't really love me that much. And I played for him for 2 years. And because of that, you fit in. Then all of a sudden you get put into this mold where they're like, we just can't play him. Right. And then other coaches see it and they're like, well, we can't play him either.
Well, it really is crazy how much the position matters. I interviewed, you know, one of my good friends is Kyle Van Noy.
Yeah.
And he's at the Lions.
For sure.
He's with a team that was a little bit struggling. He wasn't exactly in the right position, and everyone's like the same thing. Thought maybe, you know, he had been a bust or whatever else. If you talk to a Lions fan, he gets traded to a Patriots, a system and a coach that believes in him, and, you know, starts to thrive. So, well, I know you got one more year in China, and I want to talk to you a little bit about China, but is the goal to come back to the NBA? Because, I mean, everyone knows you can play basketball. You can play in the NBA. I think those that have watched you, there's no doubt in our mind that you absolutely should be playing in the NBA. The way you shoot. I know you did your charity 3-point contest last year. I'm like, oh, yeah, put me down for $15 per three. You were shooting 100 threes. I'm thinking, whatever, $500, you know, and you hit 92 out of 100 3-pointers. I mean, there is a spot for a guy that can hit 92 out of 100 3-pointers, you know. And so is that the goal ultimately, to be back, or what do you feel?
You know, I would love to, for sure. And, you know, at this point in my career, you know, I've kind of been through a lot, and I've done a lot of different things. I've been in the NBA for 5 years. I played in the D League for a little bit. I've been to China now this will be my 3rd season there. This will be my 8th professional season as a basketball player coming up. So, I mean, I've been through a lot, and at this point, you know, I just want to find the right situation for me and for my family basketball-wise. And the one tough thing about going over to China is that my family doesn't come over the whole time. And now that I have a little girl, you know, that hurts. Yeah, it hurts because I'm missing some time that I'll never get back. And so that's one of the driving forces of me being like, maybe I do, you know, want to come back to the NBA and play. And because I want to be here with my girl, I want to see her grow up, and I can do that best when we're here in the United States. And then there's part of me that's like, I want to prove to people that I can still play, you know, and can make it in the NBA, because I know I can. You know, I have that belief in me. I'm at an all-time high in confidence right now. You know, I feel great about my game, and I think that's one thing that's really helped by being over in China. I've been able to find myself again, be able to play my game of basketball and show people what I can do. And, you know, for a confidence level, and my maturity level has gotten much, much greater now. I'm 29 years old, so I feel if I do get a chance and an opportunity and a good spot in the NBA, that I'm going to thrive and I'm going to make the most of it. So that excites me. And, so the ultimate goal hopefully will be to be able to get back into the NBA. But like I said, if there's a better opportunity somewhere else, I'll take it, because I don't really care, necessarily the narrative at this point. I'm more concerned about providing for my family and making sure that we're secure, and also making sure that I'm having fun playing basketball. And wherever that's going to be, I'll take that opportunity. But obviously it would be best if it was in the NBA.
Well, I think it's been fun to watch you get your groove back a little bit, you could say, in China. I know you dropped 73 points in one game, and you're getting to be able to play basketball the way that you love to play basketball, right? And so I think you got, one more season over there. And when does that season start in
It'll
China?
start in the end of October.
End of October, okay.
Yep.
And then that goes till about February, March, right?
Yeah, exactly. Usually somewhere around there.
And then at that point you decide and you'll be a free agent. Kind of for the first time be a full free agent, I guess,
since I went over to China the first year. So it'll be like 3 years since I had been a real free agent. And which is going to be fun. It'll be really cool because I think, coming off of this season, hopefully at the end of the season, I'll be able to come back and maybe get on an NBA roster at the end of the year. A lot of Chinese guys that come from China come back and do that. We had several guys that came back this year and got on NBA rosters at the end of the year. I think there was 5 or 6 of them. So I hope to be able to do that. And then, from there, I'll be able to be a free agent and be able to show people, hopefully at that point, that I can play, and then kind of go from there and see what's going to happen. But it's exciting and nerve-wracking being a free agent because you honestly don't know where you're going to live, and it's stressful, more so on my family. They're like, we need to make arrangements, especially Whitney, because she's like a taskmaster.
Yeah.
She's unbelievable at that. She's like, I need to know where to live, and then I need to know where the grocery store is, and I need to know where I can ride my horse, and I need to, all these different things. And so she's like, just make a decision as quickly as you can. Where I'm like, I'm going to wait it out, and I'm going to let all these teams come and see what's going on, and then I'm going to make a decision. So, but it'll be fun, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about this last year in China, and then maybe I'll go back, maybe I won't.
Yeah.
But regardless, being able to go to the Chinese Basketball League has really, I feel like, been a huge part of my career, and it's if it, and it's going to hopefully help me become better as a basketball player and maybe succeed even more than I thought that I could in the NBA, because I was able to get kind of my confidence back.
Well, yeah, I think one of the nice things about going over to China is now you get to come back and play without the pressure you had the first time, right? Coming off a National Player of the Year and all that.
For sure.
But tell us a little bit about China, because I know I went out to China this fall or this winter, and I hit you guys up, and you gave me some good recommendations for some restaurants and different things like that. But you've, really taken off in China and become this celebrity basketball player. How has that experience of getting the attention there in China, being such a huge, global population and everything else, how has that been able to, playing basketball over there, what's that experience been like?
It's been amazing. It honestly has been. Obviously it's different living over in China. It's tougher, for an American to live over in China. But I am in Shanghai, which is by far the most western city in China, besides Hong Kong, but they don't have a team that isn't really considered mainland China. So, Shanghai is where you want to be if you're in the CBA. So I got fortunate to be put there in the beginning and got in a good situation with a really good team. And, Yao Ming was our owner, and he brought me over, and I had one of the Americans that were coaching, and he's the best coach in the league. And, so I got put in a great situation. And then from there, our team hadn't been great. We hadn't made the playoffs in like 6 or 7 years in Shanghai. And we got over there, and we were the number 1 team the whole year, and we got into the playoffs. And unfortunately, I had to come home. I guess it's both fortunately and unfortunately. I came home for the birth of Wesley, so I had to miss a playoff game, and that really hurt our chances. We ended up losing that series. But since then, it's just been kind of like Jim Romania all over again in China, and the people know my name. And
do they recognize you when you go out?
Yeah, I get recognized a lot. I go because you don't have transportation over there, so I have to do subway or walk, and I know the subway system like unbelievably well over there, which is funny. You just see this white guy, walk in and have my headphones in, and I know everywhere to go. And so people will recognize me. They ask for pictures, ask for autographs. But there's 33 million people in Shanghai itself. So, not everyone knows who I am, but there's probably millions of people that do, but then there's millions of people that don't, you know what I mean? So it just kind of depends. But it's been a great experience. I mean, the basketball has been great. I've been able to play the way that I do and been able to become a better basketball player than I've ever been before. Yeah. And also off the floor, I've been able to have a lot of opportunities with, marketing, deals, different things that I, wouldn't necessarily get here probably in the NBA if you're not a superstar. So, I mean,
what's been your favorite product that you've been able to endorse?
Yeah, I've been my shoe product is probably my favorite. That's been super cool. 361, which has been an awesome endorsement, and they've made 2 signature shoes for me so far. And next year they're going to make a 3rd, and then my contract's up with them, and hopefully we'll be able to re-up because they've treated me so well, and it's been a great experience so far. And we haven't been able to sell them here in the U.S. Everyone asks me about them, and it's tough because I want to give everyone some shoes, but I honestly can't get them. It's unfortunate. I can't even get them for my family almost because they make different sizes and stuff, but we're working on hopefully next year being able to sell a limited amount of my signature shoes here in the U.S. So we're really pushing that, and hopefully that will happen. But if you go to China, you can find them.
I should have bought some while I was there. I would have stopped in a store.
So that's been cool. The 361. I'm also with Melaleuca and Fluent Worlds, which is an app. And then have a couple things that could be coming up in the horizon, but it's been a cool experience.
How have you enjoyed the food in China? Is there a favorite dish that you have, and is it hard to find stuff that you enjoy eating?
I mean, there's some really good things. I've tried some really different stuff, and they fry pretty much everything. And so pretty much anything fried is pretty good, but there's some things like that I can't try, like boiled bullfrog and some of that type of stuff. Some of the stuff that's like not fully cooked, and they have like chicken head soup and like kind of stuff like that I definitely stay away from. But they have some really good fried pork, kind of like sweet and sour type fried pork things that you would kind of find at like a PF Chang's here. So I like that type of stuff, obviously more American, and I'm used to it. But honestly, when I'm on the road, some of the places we go to, there's no Western civilization almost at all. So you end up eating broccoli, rice, and eggs pretty much for every meal while you're there, it gets annoying and it's tough, but it's either that or risk getting sick, for some of the stuff. So I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I get my protein in with the eggs, and then, try to fill myself up with like a rice or a bread or a broccoli. And so that can be tough. But, overall, the food in actual Shanghai is great. They have a ton of American food. They have a Cheesecake Factory. They have like a Chipotle type thing. They have all different types of restaurants, which has been great.
Well, and how did you choose between Chinese League versus maybe the Euro League?
Yeah, for me, well, the Chinese League, they're the second highest paying league in the world, behind the NBA. So that's part of it. Obviously, I was getting offered a lot of money, but also they have the short season. Their season is only from the end of October to like the beginning of February if you don't make playoffs. So that's only 4 months. And the Euro League is 10 months. The Euro League, you go from end of August to like sometimes June.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's a lot longer of a season. And you get paid sometimes less in the Euro League, and in China, I'm definitely getting paid more than I would be making in the Euro League at this point. And I'm making more money in China now than I would make in the NBA, actually. Yeah. So I mean, it's pretty lucrative, so that goes into it. But also, I knew it's my style of basketball. I can go over there and play the way that I wanted to. There's only 2 Americans on each team, and then the Chinese consists of the rest of the team. So they really heavily weigh on the Americans to really lead the team and score and do what they do on the court, which plays into my game. So all those things kind of worked out in my favor, but that's kind of the reason why I decided to go to the Chinese League. But the Euro League obviously is super competitive and really fun, and it would be something that would be fun for me to be able to do at some point.
Cool, very cool. I know a lot of people talked about you got into it with Steph Marbury. What was what actually happened there? How did that little scuffle take place?
It was funny because obviously Steph's has been the man over there for years. They have a statue over there of him in Beijing, and he's won 3 championships. He's been on a great team. You know what I mean? So I mean he said it saved his life going to China, and he lives there, and they treat him like royalty, and it's cool to see. But, he's at the end of his career, so this was his last year. He retired after this year. But he doesn't have the same juice as he used to have as far as basketball, So he wasn't playing great, and I was playing really well, and our team, it was a close game and everything. And I think he was just a little frustrated at the moment, and he came out and he just kind of like clubbed like that, going for, kind of the ball, and my face was right there, and just kind of like drilled me pretty hard, and I'm not one that really gets upset. I'm pretty mellow guy, you know what I mean? And you can ask Whitney. I don't really have a temper at all. But that, for some reason, just really bothered me because I felt like it was a cheap shot. So I just went up and pushed him, and then he came right back and got into my face, and you can see it. We were just like face to face. You could feel some lips, you know what I mean, going at each other and everything. And it got broken up pretty quickly and everything. But we talked after the game. We're okay. We're fine. No problem. It's just competitive basketball within the game, within the series. So it was fun. But that game, we ended up going to overtime. I ended up having 54 points, 12 assists, and 11 rebounds. So it was one of my better games, and I think partially because I got mad. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm really upset right now, so I just started to play really, really well, and we ended up winning the game, having one of the best games of the season that I had. So, sometimes it helps you a little bit.
That's fun, man. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, last thing, I appreciate so much this interview, this time that you've been able to give us. Trae Young is an NBA star that just got drafted, kind of compared a lot to you. What advice would you give to him, like, as he's coming into the league right now? Because it's kind of a similar situation, player of the year, plays very similar in a lot of ways. What advice would you give him as he's coming into the NBA?
I actually had a great opportunity to work out with him last year before he got to Oklahoma, and he's a great kid. He's a hard worker, and he's very, very nice and mellow and team-oriented kid, which was great. And that's part of the battle right there. Just making sure that you don't feel like your teammates don't feel like you're, bigger than they are, and that's a big part of it, especially coming in as a rookie. I think that he's going to get a great opportunity to play right away. I think they're going to give him the ball and let him go. But it's going to be much different because every point guard in the NBA is a really, really good player.
Right.
And that's a position that's very difficult. So they're going to go at him, and they're going to go at him a lot, and offensively and defensively, because they know who he is. So I just tell him to just be who you are, control the things that you can control, and you can control your work ethic, you can control your attitude, you can control if you're happy or not. So you got to go out there and continue to think about that, and then just if they give you an opportunity to play your game, do it. You know what I mean? And don't be timid. You know how to play basketball. Go out there and do what you do, because that's the way you're going to be the most successful if you're playing in your comfort zone and playing the way that you want to play. But realizing that you may not be playing the same brand of basketball you played at Oklahoma, because there's other guys on the team that are really great players, so you won't see the ball quite as much. But you still, when you get it, just be who you are and do what you feel is most comfortable for you. So
I love that. And then one last thing is your charity, Generosity, focuses on bullying. How'd you decide? Was that something why did that mean so much to you, that particular cause?
So we started this 5 years ago, and we initially started just wanting to help families. It was the Fredette Family Foundation is what we call it still, and now we kind of got a cool slogan from my brother. He's very creative and thought of Generosity, so a lot of people have taken that name, and that's kind of what we do now. But when we started with families, and we wanted to just help families in the Provo area, and then my hometown in upstate New York, Glens Falls area, because starting a foundation is tough, and you don't have a lot of money, and it's hard to do a lot of things. But as it's grown, and we've learned about a lot of families in the Provo, Utah County area and the Glens Falls area, we talk to them, and obviously the parents are all about their kids, and the family unit's a big deal. But a lot of times they were saying that their kids were getting bullied, and they would come home and they'd go up in their room and they'd lock themselves in their room, and they would cry, and they couldn't get them to come down, and it was affecting the whole family unit. And so they're like, how can you guys help us with our kids being bullied? And we thought about it, and we're like, geez, that's a difficult thing to do. But it's something that we wanted to do because that's the request that we were really getting from these families. They didn't want help in any other thing but to help their kids. So we decided to, start making programs for anti-bullying in schools. So we're now in all 30 school districts, or all 30 schools in Provo School District. We're in a lot of schools in the Orem district. We're moving to American Fork. They want to start it up. We're already in Pleasant Grove in a lot of their school districts. And then in my hometown in upstate New York, Glens Falls, Hudson Falls, Whitehall, a lot of the areas around, we're in their schools doing our Gymorosity program, anti-bullying programs. And we get the kids to come in, and we have some of the leaders of the school come in, and we form these groups, and we talk to them about what we can do to just spread kindness and be inclusive to everyone. So we hold events to have everyone come, and we make sure that these leaders of the school are there, and they're mingling with every single type of person that's in the school. And if some people see one of the cool kids go out and reach out to another kid who may be sitting at lunch by himself or something like that, it's a snowball effect. But it has nothing to do with me or with my dad that helps, or with Blair, who's our foundation president. They don't listen to us. They listen to their peers. So it has to come within. So that's why we get in there with the kids and we say, hey, we need you guys to make a conscious effort to help out kids that are struggling. And if everyone can have that mentality, then there will be no bullying. But obviously it's still a huge issue.
Sure. But
it's something that schools have found to at least help a little bit, and feel a little bit more of camaraderie around the school. And that's why we've been continuing to spread, and it's been an amazing experience to see some of the kids that it's really affected.
Well, that's pretty cool, because not only does it help the kids that are being bullied, but usually the bullies have had some kind of tragic things going on in their own lives. It kind of helps soften them as well and give them a little bit more of that positive energy in their own lives.
Definitely. It helps everybody involved, and we're just trying to teach kids that it's okay to be different. It's okay to be who you are, and it's okay to reach out to others to help them, if they aren't like you. Awesome. It's really, that's what it's all about. And I try to do that when I was younger, and my family did always. My dad is an amazing example of that, and we just want to try to spread it as much as we can.
Very cool, man. Well, we will attach some links to your charity, to your cause on the show notes of this. And
perfect.
Dude, this has been a pleasure.
Yeah, Thanks so much. It's been a lot of fun, Jimmy.
Your journey may be just getting started, man.
Yeah, exactly. A lot more to come.
It's going to be fun to follow.
Perfect.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.